The bells rang at midnight, not the gentle chime of a clock tower, not the solemn call of a church. These were emergency bells, frantic and jarring, their echoes ripping through the city in uneven, panicked intervals. They warned of something no one could name, a nameless dread that sent shivers down the spine of the metropolis. Most people bolted their doors, huddled inside, pretending the world outside had ceased to exist. He went up. The rooftop was his destination, a solitary peak high above the unfolding chaos. Up here, the sound of the bells arrived late, stretched thin and distorted by the relentless wind and the sheer distance. From this vantage point, the city looked like a fragile network of glass and light. Too many lights, he thought, too many places for fear to hide and fester. He stood at the very edge, his long coat hanging still, defying the gusts that should have been whipping it around him. Below, the streets were emptying at an impossible speed. A collective primal instinct was at play, a force more potent than any official directive. Doors slammed shut, and windows went dark one by one, like a wave of blackness washing over the city. Instinct, he mused, works even when knowledge fails. A helicopter sliced through the night sky, its powerful spotlight sweeping across the cityscape like the gaze of a nervous god. The beam brushed over him, a fleeting touch of intense white light. It paused for a fraction of a second, an electronic hesitation. Then it moved on. The pilot would later file a report, swearing on his career that the rooftop had been empty, just a barren slab of concrete against the night. He would be wrong. The scrape of heavy boots on concrete announced new arrivals. The sound came from the stairwell door, slow, deliberate, and armed. 3 men emerged onto the rooftop, their movements tactical, their expressions grim. They froze solid when they saw him standing there, a silent silhouette against the city's dying glow. "You're not supposed to be here," one of them managed to say, his voice tight, with a mixture of authority and apprehension. He didn't turn. He didn't acknowledge them at all. At that exact moment, the bells stopped. The sudden, deafening silence that followed was thick and expectant, heavier than any sound had been. It hung in the air, a physical presence. One of the men, perhaps the bravest or the most foolish, raised his rifle. The sharp crack of the shot echoed across the rooftops, a stark punctuation in the quiet. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. The bullet, meant to tear through flesh and bone, struck his shoulder and simply fell to the concrete floor with a metallic clink. It lay there, flattened and useless, a testament to a failed law of physics. The 3 men stared, their professional composure shattering like glass. Their understanding of the world was breaking apart before their very eyes. Slowly, deliberately, he turned to face them, and they saw his eyes. They weren't glowing with an otherworldly light, not monstrous or demonic. They were just wrong. They held an age that was incomprehensible, an ancient stillness that predated the very concept of fear. They were eyes that had seen empires rise and fall like tides, eyes that had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of mountains. "You should leave," he said, his voice a calm, level river flowing through the tension. It wasn't a threat, not a command. It was a simple statement of fact, a piece of advice offered with detached sincerity. They didn't listen. Perhaps they couldn't. Their training, their orders, their entire reality compelled them to act. They fired again, a panicked volley of lead and fury. He stepped forward, and the space between them simply collapsed. It wasn't a run, not a leap. One moment he was there, the next he was here, moving with a speed that defied logic and sight. A hand, unnaturally strong, closed around the barrel of a rifle. The heat-treated steel, designed to withstand the pressures of combat, bent and twisted as if it were soft clay. A body hit the rooftop with a sickening thud and didn't get back up. Another man, his nerve completely broken, turned to run. But there was no escape. He was caught by the collar, lifted effortlessly off the ground with a single hand. There was no strain in the movement, no sign of anger on the calm face, just an overwhelming, inhuman power. "You rang the bells," he said, his voice now a soft, dangerous whisper that cut through the man's terror. "That was unwise." A scream tore from the man's throat, a raw, primal sound crossing like a roar. It ended as abruptly as it began, cut short in the cold night air. When it was over, the rooftop was empty again. The silence returned, but this time it was a peaceful, final kind of quiet. There were no bodies, there was no blood. The only evidence that anything had happened were deep grooves etched into the concrete, as if something impossibly heavy had rested there, waiting for a very, very long time. Down below, the city cautiously stirred back to life. Lights flickered back on, one by one. People peered from their windows, convincing themselves that the danger, whatever it was, had passed. They told themselves they were safe, that the nightmare was over. He remained at the edge of the roof, a silent guardian, a timeless watcher. His gaze swept over the city he had just pacified. The bells would not ring again tonight. They didn't need to. They had already been answered.